You teach a beginner golfer, they start going this way with the golf club. They are looking at the club as a spatula to lift the ball up in the air. And then you tell them, hey, look, this is a broom. You use the broom in such a manner. You do the same thing with the golf club. You don't sweep up with the broom. And then you use a very simple type of drills to convey feeling. As Homer Kelly, the author of the Golfing Machine, wrote, mechanics produce feels, and then feels will then reproduce those mechanics.
Hi, this is Stephen Lee from San Antonio, Texas, and I play at Alamo City Golf Trail. Golf Smarter number 866.
Golf is a problem-solving endeavor, as analyzed by Justin Tang from Singapore.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter Podcast, Justin.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for all that you do to grow the game.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate that. You're doing a lot more than I am, I'm sure, because you're actually teaching people how to play golf. So,
well, that's not quite true. You gather all these instructors who have so much great information from around the globe.
Clearly.
And it's impacted more people than you know. Take a look at this, right? Here you are in California. Here I am in Singapore. How did we meet? Through your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. I can't tell you how touched and honored I am that there are people from all over the globe listening and participating. So,
yeah, think about this, right? Your podcast is so big that you've got to have a Golf Smarter Mulligans. Think about that.
That's not because it's big. That's just because we've been around a long time and we have so much content. I've been doing this for such a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so big. It's
yeah,
but Justin, it's
and think.
It's not that important how big it is to me.
It is.
You know, it's the fact that I have become a better golfer by these conversations is what this podcast is all about. It's very selfish. It's all about how do I get better?
Exactly.
How can I become a better golfer?
Exactly, man. It's you sharing your journey with other people, yes. And thanks for having me on this podcast. And that's hopefully what I want to try to do.
Well, it's interesting.
During this hour or so.
You've been mentioned on this podcast multiple times. James Ragonnet talked about you, and John Erickson talked about you. And it's like, why are people talking about Justin Tang? We have to find out for ourselves.
Thank you. So I started my journey in the game of golf at a fairly advanced age of 20 or 19, 20.
Oh, really? You consider
so
that advanced?
Was the year... Yeah, I mean, when most kids of my generation started with the 5 or 6. So 1997, that was when Tiger Woods first broke out. But I didn't pick up golf because of Tiger Woods. When he won the Masters, I saw in the newspaper headlines, Tiger Woods. I asked my dad, which golf course is this? Because there was a woods, right? So I actually picked up golf in the same year, again, when Ernie Els chipped in at Congressional. And then I go, hey, I think this game is a good social game, has good business, social implications, commercial purposes somewhere down the road. So I said, hey, Dad, I would like to start golf again. Now, 10 years ago, they enrolled me into golf, but I hated it, right? It was always on a Sunday. Singapore is hot. Yeah. I can't remember what it is in Fahrenheit, but probably 90s most of the time, muggy. Yep. And you don't want to be out in the golf course at 3 in the afternoon. You want to be in the swimming pool. So hated it back then. But when I got back again at 1920, I was back at it with a vengeance. I was hitting about 300 range balls a night for 6 months. So I got good quickly. Then that spurred the question, why do I play well sometimes? And why do I play like a beginner sometimes? Fast forward a couple years later when I was in the military, I kept reading in golf magazines the golfing machine, the golfing machine, the golfing machine. And I was like, you know what? I can read. I can decipher information. Let me get this book. So I got my sister to get the book for me. She was based in the US back then for 10, 12 years. She came back on vacation. She says, hey, here's the yellow book. I'm like, I thought my instructions were quite clear, which is to get me a golf book. This looks like a geometry and physics textbook. So I left the book aside for a couple of months, and then I got around to searching on the internet again, and then there it was, the Golfing Machine Forum, Chuck Evans, Lynn Blake. So this was the advent of forums in the golfing world. So I got my education in the golfing machine by piecing together pieces of the puzzle from the internet. And then in 2005, I decided to go to California, spend a couple months there to learn the golfing machine and MORAD and learn from any instructors who were willing to share their expertise with me. Because back then, and still is, California is the mecca of the golf world. So I went up and down your beautiful state.
Oh, sorry I missed you.
So that was the. I'm sure we'll be able to meet at some point, given the new world that we live in, the old new world.
Right.
Yeah. So that was my first introduction to golf instruction. Very technical, very fundamentally based type of philosophy. When I came back in 2005, one of my buddies was the GM at a local club. He was like, hey, what are you doing these days? I said, I'm not really sure. I just came back from the US. And then he goes, like, hey, one of my instructors just quit. Would you like to help out? So there I go. It wasn't planned at all. I started teaching then. I got good results pretty quickly with those philosophies that I learned in the US. Again, very technically based type of philosophy. And then after a while, I go, there must be something more to this. It can't be that complicated. And then I went down this rabbit hole in 2010. I started reading about this gentleman by the name of Kelvin Miyahira, who was based in Hawaii. And he was talking about body parts in a way that I've never seen before. He was talking about the articulations of the shoulder joints, internal rotation, external rotation. He was talking about flexion of the wrist, extension of the wrist. I go like, this is interesting, but it's complicated. So I spent another year reading all his articles, which were free. And prior to that, no golf instructor actually talked about the anatomy as it applied to the golf swing. In 2011, I got in contact with Kelvin. I went to see him in Hawaii. And I spent about 5 to 6 years understudying him remotely. We spoke on the phone almost 2 or 3 times a week. And it got to the point where I was editing a lot of his articles that he posted on aroundhawaii.com. I believe the website is now defunct. And my teaching went to the next level. I had another tool in the box. Unfortunately, in February 2017, he suffered a stroke and has since retired from the game of golf. His family has been very kind because of our relationship. They have entrusted me with his teachings, and I hope to be able to share that with the rest of the golfing world. The final phase of my golf instruction journey, it's a journey, not a destination, there's still so much to learn, was combining my passion in psychology with the mental game as it is being taught in golf. So early on in my career in 2005, when I knew nothing, I still know very little about whatever's going on in the golf swing. I was introduced to Jim Caviezel. They were filming The Legend of Bagger Vance, if you
Sure.
recall. I read an article that was really, really intriguing. They said they had 6 months to get this guy in shape for his film. So I believe someone coined the term Hollywood swing. And then I go, hey, look, if they can make him swing like Bobby Jones or close enough, there must be something to human movement that I must have missed. So for some of my golfing clients who could not get impact, flat left wrist, I said, hey, if I could just get these guys to look like a golf swing, to make a motion that looked like a golf swing, maybe that could work. And unbeknownst to me, that planted the seed for further investigation into how the human mind, number one, acquires movement, number two, retains it, and ultimately repeats it under pressure.
Unbelievable.
So I kind of feel that post 2020, I've got that piece of the puzzle sorted. And I now feel that I've got a more holistic system or product to offer golfing clients. We were talking about golf being a simple game yet complex. I feel that it need not be an either or approach that we must take in the game of golf. For example, you talk about a lot of contradictions in the game of golf. People say, "Oh, it's a hands-only game or it's a body-only game." Well, it really depends, right? If you've got zero pivot action, then I'm going to tell you, "Hey, Fred, you got to use your hands." But if it's the opposite, I would say, "Hey, you know what? Golf is a game where you don't use your hands." So it's about creating an intent in your mind. I like to describe it this way: IFM, intentions.
Before you go there, I want to talk to you about IFM because we're going to dig into it deeper, but I want to take time out. There's so many things that you've said in this last segment that I want to ask you about, but I'm going to take a time out and let our sponsors do a little talking, and then we'll be back right after this. Well, Justin, it was interesting because when you schedule time to talk today, usually I have people, they schedule it on a platform that I use, and it makes it easier to do it on your time, which is right now you're early in the morning. I'm middle of the afternoon here. And you wrote something on there, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this part of a book? Did you just make this up? Have you been working on this sentence for decades? I mean, it just kind of flipped me out, and we talked about it before. Here's what you wrote. Golf is neither simple nor complex. Like most things in life, it's both. Sometimes the problem is a simple skills issue. Sometimes it's technique. Wisdom is required to know which is the problem. I just thought that was brilliant.
Exactly.
And so succinct.
Yeah, I kind of made that up on the fly. It was in relation to a question. It was in relation to a question last week about one of my guys that I was working with, and it just got me thinking, like, what am I? I always tell my golfers that I'm very proud when I look at all of them, all sorts of swings. And then I go like, you know what? I'm the patternless. This is a patternless pattern. Most golfers, myself included, when I was starting out, I see Fred. Okay, here we go. I'm going to give Fred a flat left wrist. Going to get him to hit down on the ball. His club shot's going to be XYZ angle. Oh, his grip is too weak. We're going to strengthen it. Oh, his grip is too strong. We're going to weaken it. And then I go, hey, look, hang on. I'm putting a preconceived idea onto Fred. What if the strong grip doesn't work for him because he's been playing golf for 20 years with that grip? Something else has to change. So that, again, led me down to another path. Like, what if, when I look at Fred, it's a completely functional swing, ball's going where he's aiming. Could it be that my library of what constitutes a workable swing is incomplete. Maybe my libraries has uh, only store of a correct swing is that of Adam Scott, Tiger Woods. And what about guys like Jim Furyk? What about guys like Matthew Wolff? Got me thinking again. Is it a skills or is it a technique issue? Well, it's both. So a skills issue is, oh, coach, I can't hit a flop shot. And then we look like, do you even know how to do it? Oh, I don't. So that's a skills issue. If you have been chipping, have been hitting bunker shots, then the technique is there, but the skill isn't. So sometimes, if you look at a guy like Jordan Spieth versus a guy like Justin Thomas, they may be able to hit the same low spinner with vastly different technique. So it got me thinking, right? We should celebrate different techniques, but work on skills at some point. So that only is applicable to really good players, guys talking about 5 handicap and below. But if you're a 36 handicapper, forget about the skills, let's work on technique. But at the same time, we don't want to shoebox you into a particular look. So for example, we don't want you to put you in a pattern, right? For example, if you're tall and lanky, we're not going to say, hey, here, take the Ian Woosnam pattern and let's fly with it. It's not going to work. If you have some physical dysfunctions that causes you to want to load your weight on the right side, I can't say, hey, let's load on the left side. We find solutions to work around your problem. Golf ultimately is a problem-solving endeavor. And that's how I look at every golf swing, every golf game. What's the problem here, and what's the solution? And we always go for the minimum effective dose. We don't need extremely complicated solutions. And you talk about IFM, right? So
Yes, please.
IFM stands for intentions, create forces on the golf club expressed in the motion of your swing. I guess after teaching for 17, 18 years now, you look at a swing, you can kind of guess a person's intention. You teach a beginner golfer, they start going this way with the golf club. You know, they are looking at the club as a spatula to lift the ball up in the air. And then you tell them, hey, look, this is a broom. You use the broom in such a manner. You do the same thing with the golf club. You don't sweep up with the broom. And then you use a very simple type of drills to convey feelings. As Homer Kelly, the author of the Golfing Machine, wrote, mechanics produce feels, and then feels will then reproduce those mechanics. So yeah, that in a nutshell is kind of the philosophy. It's a patternless pattern. And for various levels of golfers, we use different modalities or interventions to ultimately help them improve their game. And that's the reality factor, right? You can take all the golf lessons you want. You can be the smartest golf instructor in the world. But at the end of the day, does that lead to reduced scores? And I find that most instructors, myself included in the past life, is that we stand there on the lesson tee. We're not really teaching the student. What we're trying to do is to show them how smart we are. Oh, okay, I just came back from California with Fred. This is what I learned. Oh, use this method. And at the higher echelons of the game, where people are playing the game for a living, you can't just go in there and change how he loads on the backswing, how he makes his transition on the downswing. It just doesn't work that way. As James Ragonnet said, the golf swing is like running a dairy farm. You change the feed and you expect the milk to taste the same, you are deluded. It does not work that way. I think one of the best examples of golf swing change was that done by Bernhard Langer. I know people talk about Nick Faldo and Tiger Woods, but Bernhard, to me, I believe he and his coach Willie, the late Willie, did it the correct way. So Bernhard used to have a massively strong grip on tour. And over the years, it's gradually become less exaggerated to become more neutral. And it was done over a period of years. And if you look at the history, the data will show that Bernhard never had a slump, unlike Nick Faldo and Tiger Woods, where they stopped winning for a while. So that to me is probably one of the more reasonable approaches to changing golf swing technique. But these days, most people, they do it without really understanding the entire system. It's like taking apart a laptop and not knowing how to put it back.
I mean, there's so many things. So I'm curious about something though. How is your game? I mean, it sounds like you started playing as you didn't like it as a kid, but then you decided, no, I want to get involved in golf. But you wanted to get involved as an instructor, as a coach, right?
No, that was never the plan. So
you wanted to be Did you want to be a tour player? Is that was your goal, or?
Oh no. That was never my goal, right? My goal, I've always been very analytical, very inquisitive. I always, since as far as I could remember, I've always loved to read, and I've always loved to pull things apart and try to put it back.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you remember in the late 80s, there was this thing called a Tamiya model car. I always wanted to take apart the motor. Let's see if I can do stuff to the windings and make my car go faster. So I was always wired like that.
Wait a minute, you weren't around in the late 80s.
So I was born 1979.
Okay, so you were around. They were perfect time to be building models. Yeah, okay. So I've always... You seem so much younger, and yet you're an old soul. This is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I started work when I was 16 years old. So when I was 16, I was surrounded with guys that were 30, 40, 50 years old. So I believe that had an impact in how I saw things at that age. Yeah. So it kind of helped shape my philosophy.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So back to fixing stuff. So I was always wired like that. And then when I came to golf, it just seemed like an easy game because ball's not moving, right? So mind you, I was a water polo guy, soccer guy at fairly high levels. Like if I can play soccer at that level or water polo at that level, I can address this issue. So my first handicap was 6 after 10, 12 months.
Wow.
But I could never figure out how did I even do that?
Yeah. That's what everybody wants to know.
In golf, right?
How did you do that after just a year?
I had no idea, right? So I think it's probably a repetition and watching the good players in the club. When you're younger, your ability to mimic is much stronger than when you're past your 20s. And it's also the repetition of finding the sweet spot. After a while, the body kind of gets used to it. But herein lies the problem. Golf is a game that when you try to grasp, eludes you. This is what I tell my guys. This is what I call catching the cat. An interesting story. You and I sit down. Hey, kitty cat, come here. Cat never comes. You leave the darn cat alone. It keeps coming, circling, kissing your feet. You try, and then you go, hey, Fred, I think it was because we had a cup of tea here. That's why the cat came. Now you and I are trying to create a pattern to catch the cat. Guess what? Cat goes away because it's not your tea. So a lot of things in golf, as it is in life, is quite random. There is a certain randomness to golf. Now, I'm not sure if you know the name Harold Harung and Fred Travis. They are neuroscientists. Mm-hmm. So they talk about the conscious and the subconscious brain. Now, when you are driving, for example, you are operating mostly by your subconscious. We could be having this conversation. I could be driving home, and I'll still make it home safely if I don't stare at your handsome face. I'm just going long-term memory. Okay, I'm traveling at 50 miles per hour, I'm heading up this bend. I don't really think of, okay, let's do a right lateral bend of the shoulders, right? The brain perceives all this information, it estimates. There we go. 15 degrees, 10 degrees, as the case may be. So it's the same thing in the golf swing, something called self-organization. You give the body a task, it self-organizes. So when I was learning, the only task was this: take the golf club, try to strike the sweet spot of the ball with the sweet spot of the club. It was that simple. But when you start picking things apart, you start over-analyzing, you start thinking of body parts. Then now, Fred Travis and Harold Harung says there's a barrier in between the prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum. The message gets delayed. And then you experience, shucks, on that hole, I lost my timing. It's actually not a loss of timing. You interfered with the signal. In other sports, there is no such thing. When I was playing soccer, never once did I say, hey, coach, I'm going to get me 100 balls. I'm going to go to the kicking range and have me a bit of practice. Never happens. On the field of play, another thing that never happens is this. Ball's coming. I say, hey, guys, take the ball back. I'm going to do some practice headers. Never happens. But in the game of golf, we learn the game of golf off the actual field of play. I see my guys, when I play with them, on the tee, they take 5 or 6 practice swings. I go, hey, John, didn't we just have a lesson yesterday? Why are you taking 5 practice swings? You don't trust what I taught you or what? So, and then, we take that 5, 10 practice swings and we still mess the shot up.
Yep.
So I go like, what's the point in that practice swing? The practice swing only serves to further confuse your body. You put more barriers in between the brain and the muscles. You create a more delayed timing. And that's the maddening thing that most people don't address. We talk about skills and technique, right? When you watch the PGA Tour, Mr. Top 10 golfer in the world comes, boom, pull hooks it into OB. What's the first thing he does? They more often than not, these guys will usually take their club and make a swing, as though it was the swing that caused the pull hook. Well, it is, but let us take it one step back. What changed in the head that caused a change in the motor movement? And I think once people understand that, well, certainly my golfers understand that, you are now able to play with a free mind.
Right.
And that goes back again to viewing the golf swing through different lenses.
Great. Listen, we're going to take...
through the lenses.
I'm sorry, we're going to take another time out because, again, I have so much to ask you about. We'll be right back. You're talking a lot about the technique and the skills, but you're also talking about how our mind gets in the way. I love that line. The practice swing only serves to confuse the body, right? Yeah. So what is it? And this is something I've been talking a lot about and learning a lot about lately. And it's, as I was writing to a listener this morning, the last few months of Golf Smarter has opened me up to a completely unique or different way of approaching the game. And it's not focused mainly on my golf swing. It's focused on external focus, and not with what I'm doing in my body. And
Gabrielle Wolf.
Yes, absolutely. And since May of this year, June of this year, which is just only 4 months, I've gone from 11.4 to a 6.4 in my index, which is a dramatic drop at that level. And I can really attest nothing more than stop thinking about what I'm doing when I'm making my swing. And I've just become a more efficient, proficient golfer. I played this weekend and had this one shot, par 3, 9-iron, knew what I had to do, and I shanked it. And I just started laughing. And my playing partner said, I love when you do that. I said, you love when I mess my shot up? He goes, no, I love that you laugh at it. I said, well, throwing my club and getting angry is not going to do anything because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my intention was. And it didn't happen. And to me, that's golf. Okay, now I ended up parring the hole because I was able to chip up and get myself close. But it's really this whole mind game that I'm going through, this whole mind process that I'm going through of not thinking about these things, of using external focus, has really made a tremendous difference in my game.
Yeah. So what you mentioned is different sides of the same coin. You're talking about expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't expect anything and something happens or not, your emotional state is not disturbed. So, for example, in your birthday, you expect Justin Tang to buy you a 30-year-old bottle of whiskey. You saw him going to the store. You saw him Googling for a whiskey. You have that expectation. I show up to your party empty-handed. How do you feel? You already set yourself up. You're expecting something. And when we do that on the golf course, we go, hey, I was striping it on the practice range. I'm going to break par today. Today is the day. Guess what happens on the first hole? Double bogey.
Yep.
And then what happens is this, right? When the thing that you expect doesn't happen, it creates all manner of confusion and strife in the body. And most people don't know how to get rid of that confusion. So Dr. Easy Justice talks about the change in brainwave frequency.
Dr. Justice was on
exactly the same thing.
Dr. Justice has been on the show.
Yeah, he's good at focus band stuff, right? And if you don't understand that, how to reduce your brainwave frequencies, the rest of the round is shot. But let's again take that one step back further. How about changing our perspective so that the brainwave frequencies don't even get affected? You stand on the tee, okay, and you realize that golf is a series of unrelated events. Okay, I just pull hook my shot into the rough. That happens in golf. You take it in your stride and you go to the ball like, okay, this is a chance to practice that hook shot that my instructor showed me. Get it on the green, you birdie. Hang on, you pull hooked it off the tee. Is that a predictor of what's going to happen with the end of the hole? Or with the score you're going to shoot? No. So once you adopt that mindset where we have high confidence, no expectations, I tell my golfers, you are able to play free. And I've been working with one Corn Ferry Tour player for 6 months. He called me after missing one cut. I didn't even realize, I didn't see the scores back then. I was on vacation and he sounded like he made the cut. And he was like, oh, no, I played badly today. I was tired. I missed the cut. And then I said, welcome to a new golfing reality. Because I couldn't tell whether you played well or not. You were what I call even. You were of an even mindset. And that's the mindset you need to succeed in most things in life. You don't beat yourself up when things are bad. Neither do you get too excited when things are going good. So that's more of the philosophy that I try to teach the better players who are trying to play for a living. And a lot of this comes from my time consulting with as a performance coach with hedge funds. So let's go back to technique again.
Sure.
With TrackMan, Foresight, Force Splits, Body Track, all these X-ray systems, there are no more secrets in golf. But faulty technique is very easy to blame because that's the only thing you can see, right? You see a guy pull hook, you see a guy make a slice, you automatically think that pro must be coming over the top. But can they really? It's a game of inches and degrees. I tell people, right? I ask people, let me ask you this, friend. how many degrees does 1 minute on the watch face represent?
360.
No, 1 degree on the
1
watch
degree?
face. Yes.
1 degree, 1 second. So
It's 6
6
degrees.
degrees.
So 6 degrees is the difference between a push draw and a hook.
Wow.
And if most people can't tell me this, right? I say, hey, if you don't know what 6 degrees looks like, there's no way on earth you know what 3 degrees look like. And if you can't, then why are you messing around with your technique and your backswing and downswing? I'm not saying that technique is not important. What I'm saying is you need to know, is it a skills or a technique issue? And if it's a technique issue, there is a very specific way to go about it. And it's not something that can be measured in degrees. We change movement pattern with a general, not with specifics. You can't. The body doesn't work that way. You got to give the body a task, and this is where we're going. When I actually teach, first of all, I don't have a preconceived idea, like I mentioned before, but I only want to teach students a couple things, and these are universal truths, as you will see. First, we've got a tool, the golf club. I'll show you. This is how we use the tool. Look, the shaft is leaning forward when we place the sole of the club on the ground. See the sweet spot touches the ball? That's how we use the tool. Then, I will teach the only 2 fundamentals that matter. And I say fundamentals because regardless of your grip, your backswing, how you stand, all good golfers do this when they strike a good shot. And it is this. You make a sound in front of the ball or take a divot, and that divot or that sound goes somewhere towards your target. Every golfer has that. It is undeniable. We can disagree about the grip. We can disagree about the backswing, but we cannot disagree on these 2 fundamentals. And I present this as a task to all golfers. Everyone leaves my lesson tee hitting the ball better. Now, how they look while making these 2 fundamentals are dramatically different. Certainly, you can come over the top and make that sound in front of the ball and manipulate your wrist so that the face kind of points to the target. That's a start. And then we start changing it bit by bit. Again, there's a very specific way we address all these changes with intentions. So, for example, if your backswing is quote-unquote too upright, I may get you to do something like, okay, on the backswing, just lay your shaft flat on a table behind you. How I like to say it is this. A plus B will give you C. Suddenly you're on plane. Without even trying to get on plane. Your body doesn't work on, Fred, you're slicing the ball, can you hit it straight? The body doesn't work that way. If you're slicing the ball, you need to know how to create a hook. And then you have a cone. Say it's a 40-yard cone. Then the next shot I would like you to hit is maybe a 20-yard slice, 20-yard hook, 10 yards. And before you know it, the cone gets so small, I tell golfers, there's your straight shot. It is that complex. If you want to be a fantastic wedge player, go play a game where you hit high fade, low draws, high draws, low fade. Long, short, just nice. Variable training, differential training as it is known.
Yep.
And that's how we learn every other sport, except golf. We go to the golf range, we see 50. Okay, I'm going to set my shaft here. I'm going to hit 50. Well, are you going to enter a 50-yard wedge tournament? I didn't think so.
I'm going to take another
Most
time.
Most people do that with their...
I'm sorry. I'm going to take another time out and we'll be back. Because you're the one. Actually, you talked about Golf Smarter Mulligans earlier, and that's what we have to do is find out what's happening this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans. So we'll find out right now. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, we meet Marius Filmalter, a master putting instructor who's also a Yips specialist.
Let's first define Yips. Yips is like a hiccup right before impact. It starts happening about 180 milliseconds before you actually make contact with the ball. As I say, it's like a hiccup. The closest thing that I can really describe that people know about is a stutter. Just before impact, the hands start stuttering. And under pressure, obviously, the stutter becomes even more pronounced. People say to me, yeah, it's because I have tension. Now, tension really just sort of aggravates the problem, is not causing the problem. This hiccup or stutter just before impact is obviously a neurological problem orchestrated by the mind, so it originates in the mind.
That's Golf Smarter Mulligans, episode 182, originally released in 2011, featuring Master Putting Instructor Marius Filmalter. From the archives of Golf Smarter that are no longer available, please subscribe for free to the best of the Golf Smarter podcast called Golf Smarter Mulligans from wherever you're listening right now. Justin, why is it that you think that golfers truly believe that they need to hit hundreds of balls all the time to become a better golfer? What is it they're trying to accomplish? And they may not, without any coaching, without anybody, without any feedback to tell them that they're doing it right or not, other than the ball flight.
Well, it seems as if.
Yeah.
Right? It seems as if that's the reasonable thing. But golf is a vastly different game from running a marathon.
Sure.
Marathon, you take the mindset, today I ran 5 miles. Next week, 6, 7. That's how you go, right? And it works. Regardless of your technique, you could be running with bow legs. Eventually, you go through the grind, you get through what I call the pain threshold. You will at some point complete a marathon, barring any health issues. But golf is not that way. And most people have this mistaken idea. If I stand there enough, I pound enough golf balls, I will somehow reach the promised land. It doesn't quite work that way.
No, it doesn't.
Because there is no such thing as muscle memory.
Right.
You're not going to say, hey, left biceps, wake up, I need Justin's email address. the muscles...
That's a very funny concept.
The muscle, but most people do that. The muscles have no cognitive ability. I can prove this to you. You go to a guy who's in a comatose state. You give him a golf club. The muscles are there, healthy. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Similarly, you give a guy a golf club. You give a quadriplegic a golf club. The brain's working, but the muscles are not. There is a disconnect between the brain and the muscles. The nerves are severed, so it's not going to work that way. Right? So most golfers think muscle memory. I do enough of it, the muscles will remember the move. I watch enough of BJ's thing, it's going to happen. But it doesn't. Everything starts with an intent, and it ends with feedback. So if you don't know what you're looking for, then how do you know when you found it? You will never know. Most golfers treat golf like a form of exercise. Hey, look, if you want to go to the golf range and hit 1007 irons to sweat it out, go for it. And if you think golf is a walk, you know what? Who am I to argue with you? But if your idea is to get better at this maddening game, then you got to play it by the rules of the game and how the mind actually learns to acquire motion, proper motion. Because you do that often enough, you will acquire improper motion. I mean, think about this, right? I tell my golfers, the only time you're going to hit 2 consecutive drivers is if you hit the first one OB. So why are you doing that on the practice tee? And practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. And also there's a very specific way to practice certain things depending on what you're trying to develop. We talked about variable differential training when it comes to skills acquisition. But when it comes to technique, then it's better to focus on things externally. Focus on the golf club, my favorite. Task-based learning. What are you trying to do with that tool? We take a hammer. We don't think of articulating our joints and motion. We go there. We see a nail. We react to that nail. Which brings me also to the next point. Right? A lot of instructors are going around with hammers looking for nails. But what if the problem is a hole that needs to be drilled? Then your tool is wrong. So I like to have many, many tools in my toolbox. Then I can address the problem that the client is facing, not some kind of preconceived idea of what Fred is going through. And then there's this talk about there are some instructors who go around saying, "Hey, Fred, you got to get worse before you get better." Now imagine if I were your driving instructor. They say, "Hey, you're going to crash into some fire hydrants before you get better. You're going to fire me on the spot."
Yeah.
So if you went around taking lessons the proper way, giving lessons the proper way, you should see immediate results.
But lots of times, I've had lessons and things, is I do see immediate results, but then I leave. Like when I'm there with the instructor, I see immediate results and like, okay, now I got this. And then I leave and it's like everything, when I come back to the driving range a couple days later or a week later, it's like, wait a minute, none of this makes sense anymore.
Well, cause and effect. Right?
Yeah.
You have just experienced what we call spurious correlation. You thought that move addressed your issue. Actually, you may only have addressed a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, for a while it works, but you've not really addressed the core issue that's causing all these downstream effects. It could be a setup. Most of the time, it's also your backswing, how you start your backswing. Right? The backswing begins a series of motions which creates a path for the downswing, which is very difficult to compensate, depending on your skill level. Some of the top guys can do it repeatedly, but it's not going to stand up over the course of time. So I feel that once you can accurately identify the root cause of your problem, it should be able to be fixed permanently. So I always say this, right? Sometimes the golf instructor lies, but the ball never lies. You go by your ball flight, that's your best teacher. If the ball's starting left of your target line, that's a pull, potentially path and face issue, and then you work backwards, like, oh, I'm probably standing too open, too close. There's no formula, right? Everyone's totally different, and it really takes experience looking at thousands and thousands of swings in person, on video, and just trying to understand what's the real cause of your problem. And then once that's identified, you go there. I go to the problem with maybe 5-6 different tools. I try to teach the same thing in maybe 5 or 6 different ways, like flattening the shaft. There's so many ways of doing it. You can do it right lateral bend. You can do it by pushing the handle up. You can do it by letting the club head drop behind you. Myriad of ways to get the same thing done. It's about understanding how you as the instructor, how you as the student learns. Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? Or are you a kinesthetic learner? And then I try to identify those things after talking to you. And then I take a let's see what happens approach.
Can I ask you, you love to take things apart and put them back together. What is it that you feel is the best advice you've ever received as a golfer? Not as an instructor.
In terms of?
Not in terms of playing the game. Not as advice from one instructor to another instructor, but as an instructor or an observer to the golfer, what do you feel is the most helpful, best advice you've ever received?
There are many ways to get things done. You may be swinging like Ben Hogan, but you want to look like Davis Love. That swing can still get things done. You need not be on your A game to play well. All you need to do is learn how to get things done with what you have. Ultimately, the ball doesn't know what kind of swing hit it. It doesn't know what brand of clubs hit it. It only knows something hits it in a particular manner, face the path, it's going to react accordingly. That's all the ball knows. People have this habit of using subjective language on their shots. So they hit, call it a high fade that goes 10 yards. Say, oh, a bad shot. So when you use subjective terms like that, it evokes emotions. So instead of saying bad shot, I tell my golfers, just describe it objectively. It's a fade that went high and went to the right. Not the appropriate shot for a dogleg right with water on the right side. And then once you start looking at things objectively, you go, hey, that's something we can work around. It's like the cat that we were talking about, catching the cat. You and I may not agree that the cat is cute, but we can agree that the cat is white, black, or ginger. We can agree on that. And that is what I call constructive feedback. When you say, hey, coach, the ball went fade 20 yards, we can fix that. But when you use terms like good or bad, I don't know how good or how bad you felt it was. It is very qualitative. But when we work with objective, quantitative statements, we can do something about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in a very roundabout way, accept the fact that there are many ways of getting things done. And that frees you up on the golf course. Hey, you know what? This hole is a par 4. I just not cold top. I hit a thin shot that went low, 180 yards. I'm going to use a 7 instead of pitching wedge. But hey, I can play this hole another way. Suddenly, you're freed up mentally. And remember, we talked about barriers from the brain to the muscles. When you don't have emotional barriers, you perform your best. Interview golfers who just shot a 63. One of my guys shot a 63 in one of the pro events. He said, hey, coach, only had 3s and 4s on the cut. He didn't tell me I swung it really good. He said, I played free. I was so free. It was like a walk in the park. You interview golfers who shoot 58, 59, Jim Furyk. He's not going to tell you that top of the backswing position, solid as a rock. He's not going to say that. He's going to say, I really wasn't thinking of much.
Yeah.
And that's when your body performs the best.
It's true. That's one of the epiphanies that I've most recently had is that the times that I've had my best rounds of golf and I've played my best, I wasn't thinking about what I was doing with the golf swing. I was free from that. And that's what helped me realize this external focus is just really good for me. It works really well for me. I don't think I'm a golfing machine type of student, right? I don't know if I can get into that kind of technical aspects of, and the tinkering. There are people like that, and you're probably one of them. But for me, that's not helpful. I can't give it that much attention. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And that's how we learn to play other sports.
Right.
I think the golf swing is one of the most overanalyzed moves in golf, in the history of sport.
Or the history of man.
Think about history of man. Yeah, but if you decompose the game itself, it's nothing more than grown men trying to hit a white ball with a stick that has a funny looking thing at the end of the stick. Now, if you frame it that way, suddenly the game doesn't become intimidating. But when you go, hey, Fred, this is a club, whatever brand, there's a face there, there's a sole there, there's a heel and a toe, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. then the brain starts to have preconceived ideas about what it should or should not do with the stick. But when I present it to golfers, this is just a stick. Can you just swing the stick? And while you're swinging the stick, just try to point the stick at a straight line. Oh, okay, that's called being on plane. Without even thinking about golf swing mechanics. So I've come full circle, gone very technical, and then now, just 2 days ago, one of my students said, "Hey, I need to say this. I think you're too simple." I'm like, "What?" He said, I think you're too simple. You need to be a bit more technical. I'm like, "Okay, if you want it, here it is." Started going golfing machine Morad with him. It's like, okay, I see where you're coming from now. Like, the brain just doesn't learn that way. It's about the task. Once you accomplish the task, you end up with a pretty decent looking golf swing. And the task changes all the time, right? Depending on the intent that I'm trying to create in a golfer's motion. It's a never-ending process, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Improvement.
It's a lifelong pursuit.
Every day.
It's a lifelong pursuit, and thank goodness it's the type of game, type of activity that we can do for most of our lives.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? What's improvement? Most people think of improvement as technique. It's not always technique. Look at Rory, right? He won recently. And he credited that win to his improvements from 125 yards in. That is a skills issue. Well, that's a skills improvement, right? Did he change his technique or not? I don't know. Didn't really mention that. But a golf swing, winning golf is multifaceted. There's fitness. Well, if you're overweight, can't walk 4 days, start going to the gym, that's going to help you reduce your scores. Bat from bunkers, fix the skills issue, you can improve from there. So it may not always be technique related. It could be thinking. It could be strategy, right, on the golf course. I had this chat with one of my guys playing on the Asian tour. I said, hey, you said you hit 16 greens, but you only shot like a 67. I said, are you able to tell me which part of the hole you were, or rather in relation to the hole, were you always below or above the hole? Oh, I was above most of the time. I said, there you go. We found the problem. I said, oh yeah, good you pointed it out, because I try to just fiddle the ball somewhere close to the hole when I'm above the hole. So the approach that we're taking is that this week, when you play, try to keep the ball below the hole, and you're right-hander, so you love your uphill right to left putts, as most right-handed golfers are. So we'll see, man. That's the approach we're taking this week.
Yep.
So it's about holistic approach. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. You are at EliteGolfSwing.com, correct?
No. So that website hasn't been updated for a while. The best way golfers can find me is on Instagram at Elite Golf Swing.
Okay, that's a great way to do it. At Elite Golf Swing.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, that came about years ago.
Oh, well, we'll get that fixed.
The name's easy to remember.
It's a good one. That's a good one. Well, Justin, it's been an absolute education and a pleasure to be able to speak to you. I appreciate you reaching out and getting up early in the morning. I don't know if this is getting up early in the morning for you, but you got an early start to have this conversation, and it was really entertaining and enjoyable and highly educational. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Fred. And again, thanks for doing all you're doing to grow the game of golf.
So I may not have time to create the video file for this interview. It takes a lot more time to do the video than it does the audio version, at least for me. But clearly, I'm trying to include the full interviews on our YouTube channel as often as possible. So if you're the type of learner who would rather watch the interview than listen to it while you're multitasking with a podcast, then in addition to following us as one of your golf podcasts, hopefully your favorite golf podcast, please also subscribe to Golf Smarter TV on YouTube. Now, I want to thank Stephen Lee from San Antonio, Texas, who plays regularly at the Alamo City Golf Trails, for being our latest Golf Smarter ambassador. If there are players in your group that are also podcast listeners and you want to get them to listen to Golf Smarter, there's no better way to bring it up in conversation at the tee box than to say that you were on the show. Think about it. Hey, I was on Golf Smarter this week. You were what? I was on the podcast. How is that happening? Well, you got to get them to listen. So Stephen chose to get the glove and glove storage compartment from redroostergolf.com, and you can too. And you'll have a choice of the new glove or Tony Manzoni's Lost Fundamental video. So please join the team and send me an email letting me know that you'd like to introduce an upcoming episode, and I'll send you some simple instructions and your choice of which prize to win. Just write to GolfSmarterPodcast@gmail.com or click on the Hey Fred button over at GolfSmarter.com. So I just returned with a cold, obviously, from my first golf buddy trip since 2019. Oh, it's been so long and I've missed it so much. Actually, in 2019, our last trip, we went to San Antonio and actually played at Alamo City Golf Trail. I might have seen Steven there. I don't know. Anyway, this weekend we went to Scottsdale, Arizona for 3 rounds and also drove up to Prescott, Arizona at Stone Ridge Golf Course for our 4th round. Definitely one of those courses you have to play multiple times before you get a sense of what you're doing out there. And it is not a walking course. It covers a lot of beautiful mountain terrain. And luckily, they give you that booklet with the advice of how to play each hole. Those are so incredibly helpful when you've never played a course before. We also played our final of 4 rounds at Sunridge in Scottsdale. That was fabulous. It was our last round, and I had my best 9-hole stretch on the back 9, which includes what they call the Wicked 6 from holes 13 to 18. And I don't know how, but I shot a 1-over on the back 9 with a gimme putt for birdie on the blind 18th. Secured a tremendous 79 for that day. But the weekend also included a round of 91 for me. So you know what I say to that? That's golf. There's 11 strokes over 4 rounds in a row. It just happens, and you got to live with it. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions for upcoming episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Please click on the Hey Fred button at GolfSmarter.com.